for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Good evening, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Bespoke radio for the masses. Yeah, man. How you doing? How you doing? Today's Wednesday, March 30th, 2022. Let's do this, man. 89 days into the new year, only 276 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in the middle of nowhere, a total undisclosed location. But it is beautiful in here. I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer, and NX Networks, Race Hobbs. I am your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? I had to do a quick text. See how I do that live on the radio? Man, this thing is just moving. It like swings in. Oh, man. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Oh, man. Tonight, we have a very special guest on this program, Don Schmitt. And one of my favorite guests, one of my favorite people on this planet. He is, in large part, one of the reasons why I do what I do. And the fact that we have become so close over the years is just an honor and a privilege. And talking to him earlier, he just makes me laugh, man. He is just the guy. But that being said, it is the 75th anniversary of Roswell this year. And Don's research and books into Roswell, going back, I mean, for me now, you know, if you think about it, it's 25, 30 years of reading that I've been doing with Don, and I've always felt an attachment to his research and his writing style, and who he is, and I'm here to tell you, tonight we are going to do Roswell Revisited, and I mentioned this last week on the show. That Don and I were talking on the phone, and we knew, you know, it's the 75th anniversary of Roswell, and Witness to Roswell's got a new edition out, the 75th anniversary edition, and we're talking about that, and that's great, and the book is an amazing book. I have it, but putting that aside, I said, Don, when was the last time we just did a show about Roswell? I mean, about the event. And I think that, for the most part, my attitude towards it must be the same as everybody else's. In that we hear about Roswell all the time, and people will go and talk about how important it is and certain things about, but we don't necessarily ever really talk about Roswell. What happened, the sequence of events, and the importance of those days that happened. And he said, Jimmy, we haven't done that. And I said, let's do that. Let's do that. Let's just go at Roswell from the beginning to the end. And he said, absolutely. I think that's a great idea. And that's what we're doing tonight. And for those of you out there that may be new or newer to the subject of UFOs, UFO research, and ET and contact and all of that, you've probably done just that. You've heard a little bit about Roswell. You hear it mentioned all of the time, and to go back and collect books and get all the reading done and all of the research and everything, because it's such a huge case. There's so much involved with it that you probably haven't done that, but you know Roswell happened. Well, tonight we're going to walk you through it. All right. Now, this is the thing, and I told Don earlier, I've got no notes in front of me. No notes tonight. I'm going to test Don's memory. And he is the best with this. He knows so much. And it's a great opportunity for me to test myself too. And to go through this and how do I remember it? And I've read so many books. So many books. I have so many books about Roswell, all of the original ones that I started reading in, I'm going to say, man, it had to have been in the 80s at some point, and then really started collecting them in the early 90s through the mid 90s. Man, I had stacks of books. I had so many books on Roswell, and I read every single one. And I mean, did I already read this? Because I had absorbed so much information and how it overlapped from, and it didn't matter who wrote the books on Roswell. The facts are the facts of the case. And so you see those presented in book after book. That's how many I read, where I had to go back and wait a minute. Did I just bought this, right? Did I already own it? And I literally, I'm exposing myself right now. I literally would go back and check. No, I don't own this book. Okay, I'll continue reading. But that's it. Tonight, Don Schmitt is here, Roswell Revisited. Tomorrow night is another Fader night with open lines all night long. Now, breaking news. I just got word right before showtime tonight that John Lear has left this earth. He left this earth last night at his home in Las Vegas. I don't have any other information at this point, and when I get it, I will pass it on. John Lear. Incredible, incredible. Rest in peace, John. You earned it. You certainly earned it. And everybody wants their own crystal skull. You know what to do. Go to EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. Carolyn Ford's website. Use the promo code Jimmy for 10% off of your crystal skull order today. And coming up June 18th, which is a Saturday, one-day event, the biggest on the calendar all year long. It is Disclosure Fest, the mass meditation initiative going on at the downtown historic park in Los Angeles, right next to Chinatown. I'm hosting the event with musical performances by Trevor Hall. I think he just sold out Red Rocks like 5 nights in a row. Trevor Hall's going to be there. The Desert Dwellers are going to be there. Poran Gee is going to be there, and many, many more musical guests on 4 stages. There's 16 stages overall. Workshops with Billy Carson and Adam Apollo, and Lori Spagna is going to be there. Laura Eisenhower, Brad Olson, David Palmer, and many others. I want you to go to disclosurefest.org for tickets and information. That is disclosurefest.org. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio, the Sandbox at J, it's the letter J, Church Radio, at JChurchRadio, right there on Twitter. Come and follow me and enjoy my internet presence that is right there on Twitter. Posted that crazy photograph today from Hubble, the Hubble Space Telescope. It's in my breaking news. We'll get to that in just a second. Let's get to the breaking news. Roman Rybov, the Ukrainian soldier who told a Russian warship to go F itself, as he helped try and defend Snake Island, was awarded a government medal in a video posted by Ukraine earlier today. Rybov received the award. The award is called For Merits to the Cherkasy region from regional governor Thor Tabre. Roman was one of a handful of soldiers manning the defenses of Snake Island in the Black Sea during the early hours of Russia's invasion of Ukraine last month. He and other Snake Island defenders were initially declared dead until it became clear that they had been captured by Russian forces. The captured Ukrainian soldiers were freed last week in a prisoner swap. Now, I just talked about Hubble. That's because the most distant single star ever seen dates back to less than 1 billion years after the universe's birth and the Big Bang, and it may shed light on the earliest stars in the cosmos. All of this in a new study that was presented today. The scientists nicknamed the star Earendel, from an Old English word meaning morning star or rising light. Earendel, whose technical designation is WHL0137-LS, is at least 50 times the mass of our sun and millions of times as bright. This newfound star, detected by NASA's Hubble Space Telescope, is so far away that its light has taken 12.9 billion years to reach Earth, appearing to us as it was when the universe was about 900 million years old. That's at just 7% of its current age. Until now, the most distant single star detected, discovered by Hubble in 2018, existed when the universe was about 4 billion years old, or 30% of its current age. It's an amazing image. Go to my Twitter feed and you can see it right there. This morning, NASA astronaut Mark Vande Hei ended his record-breaking time on the International Space Station with a parachute-assisted landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan at 7:28 a.m. Eastern Time. Vande Hei is wrapping up a 355-day mission on the space station, the longest single stretch any American has ever spent in the final frontier. The previous record was held by NASA's Scott Kelly, who spent 340 days aboard the orbiting lab from March 2015 to March 2016. Well, tonight, as I speak to you, the dazzling northern lights could light up the skies as far south as the northern United States after the detection of 17 solar eruptions blasting from a single sunspot, 2 of which are headed straight for Earth. The 2 Earth-directed eruptions have merged into, and I quote here, a cannibal coronal mass ejection, and they are barreling towards Earth at 1.9 million miles per hour. When it crashes into the Earth's magnetic field tonight, the result will be a powerful G3 geomagnetic storm. G3 storms can cause an intermittent satellite navigation performance and low-frequency radio navigation problems. A recent storm in February sent 40 Starlink satellites tumbling back to Earth, and scientists have warned that an even larger one could have the potential to cripple the entire internet across the globe. Not the flat Earth, the globe. Let's get the show cracking. Happy birthday to today, MC Hammer. MC Hammer is 59. I was going to wear my MC Hammer pants tonight. Forgot to put those on. Eric Clapton, today, slow hand, is 76. Jazz singer Norah Jones today is 42. And the one, the only, Jim Dandy Mangrum today is 74. Our dead guy's birthday today is Randy Van Warmer. 1955 to 2004, died so young at the age of 48. Randy was a singer-songwriter and guitarist with the huge international hit song, Just When I Needed You Most. Yeah, you remember that tune. It reached number 8 on the UK singles chart in September 1979 after peaking at number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 1 on the Billboard Hot Adult Contemporary Tracks. He wrote several songs for the group, the Oak Ridge Boys, including the number 1 U.S. country hit, I Guess It Never Hurts to Hurt Sometimes. And you remember that song too, don't you? Randy died of cancer on January 12th, 2004 in Seattle, Washington. He was just 48 years old. Here's the deal. In line with one of his greatest loves, space, some of his cremated remains were sent into space in 2007 and then again in 2012 aboard the first successful private space flight to the International Space Station on the SpaceX Dragon. Wow. Happy birthday, Randy. On this day in history, 1981, God, I remember this like it was yesterday. 1981, President Ronald Reagan is shot outside of a Washington, D.C. hotel by John Hinckley Jr. Now, on March 30th, 1981, I know exactly where I was. I was on spring break in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. All right, my senior year in high school, flew down there with a friend of mine, Walt. He had a house down there. So we flew down for spring break, and I was walking from the pool through the living room at his house, and there it was on the TV, live, Ronald Reagan and him being shot. And I stopped, and I just watched it right there during spring break. And so I know exactly where I was, March 30th, 1981. I was in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Fader fact, in 2009, Christopher Schilt, a 52-year-old man, used forged papers to enroll as a high school student at Waterford High School in Waterford, Connecticut. By the end of the first day, he got caught. And he was charged with 3 counts of first-degree forgery, second-degree criminal trespass, and breach of peace. He was convicted and then sent to a state mental hospital for a very extended stay. That's your Fader fact. Tonight, very special guest Don Schmitt returns. It is the 75th anniversary of Roswell. Absolutely incredible. His new book is out, the 75th anniversary edition of Witness to Roswell. And the links for the book we have right up in social media and over on our website. You can head over to Amazon, get yourself your own copy. And tomorrow night, another Fader night with open lines all night long. Third Stone Studio. MC Hammer and those MC Hammer pants. I had like a lot of those. I did. We all wore them too. We all did. With my long hair. And I was wearing, I think I had red ones, just like MC right there. River Moon Coffee, rivermoonwellness.com. Fade to Black Blend. Promo code F2B Blend. That's right, man. I love my new burr grinder. I'm going to post a picture of it. I really am. When I get a new guitar, I don't post pictures. New Harley, haven't posted a picture. No, haven't done any of that. Right? New couch? No. No. Just not going to do it. I have all kinds of things, right? New burr grinder? That deserves a picture. I'll post it tomorrow. Yeah. All right. Can't we talk? I need everybody to focus right now. I need you to focus. Follow your bliss. Do it now. The definition of bliss: perfect happiness, great joy. To reach a state of perfect happiness, typically so as to believe and be everything oblivious of everything else. All right? You know, I often think about those who get up every morning and go to a job that makes them absolutely miserable. Just heading to an atmosphere that brings them down. And anyone in this situation, which is most of the world, by the way, it's something that you think about all day long. Being miserable. Now, for anybody doing a job or in a career that makes them sad, there's somebody else out there who wants your job and your career. Your job and your career may be their bliss. It's just the way that it is. I have a friend that I worked with for many years. And his job was technical, okay? And he was great at it. And I really loved working with him. But he kept telling me things, you know, like throwing me hints like, you know, I don't know. I kind of fell into this position. I don't really dig it. But now I own a house and I'm married and I'm stuck. You know, he would say these things and I would just like scratch my head. Now, this was a professional guy, right? And really, really good at his job. Seriously good. And he had it all. Health insurance, 401k, vacation time, new car, home, kids, and a career path that was just laid out in front of him. And then one day, he says to me, "Today is my last day." And I was like, "What?" And he says, and I'm not making this up, he says, "I just got a job training horses." And again, I was like, "What? What do you mean training horses?" And he says, "I've been going to school on the side for training horses. And tomorrow I start shoeing horses." And he was happy. Seriously. You have to understand what I'm saying to you right now. My friend was walking away from a professional technical job at a major corporation. He was leaving to shoe horses. Then he goes on to explain to me that his whole life, he wanted to work with horses. He wanted to be a cowboy. That was his dream. But somehow after college, he got stuck in the rat race and he couldn't find a way out. And that he was miserable. And then he went on to tell me that over the last couple of years, he's been going to school, learning the trade. That's right. And now that he was certified and he had gotten an entry-level job shoeing horses, and yes, today was his last day. Now, yeah, I was more than bummed. He was a friend, and I was going to miss him being around the office, but I could see his happiness. He had changed from the person I saw just the day before. Then I take off my watch off my wrist, and I handed it to him. And I said, "This is for you. And when you check the time, man, just think of me." And he puts the watch on, you know, looks at it, shook my hand. That was it. I never saw him again. We've stayed in touch, though, you know, in our electric universe. And I spoke to him last summer on the phone, and the subject came up. I said, "Dude, I still can't believe you walked away." And he said something like, "I'm so happy, man. Life makes so much sense now. I get up every day smiling." And by the way, I went from shoeing to training show horses. Every day I get to shoe a horse and then I just ride. He was so happy. Now, there are many morals to this story, but my main takeaway is this. Only you know what your bliss is. You have that one thing that only you knows about. Maybe you've kept it inside. Maybe you've told a few friends or family members. But you know that you haven't found it yet. You know what it is, and you haven't gotten it. It's still out there. And it's the only thing that will make you happy and show you what life is all about. Go and find your bliss. Do it now. No matter what it is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But the point is that so very few actually follow through with their dreams. Most are scared, and I understand that. But you just don't want to be the person at the end of life's journey saying, I coulda, I shoulda. You don't want to be that person. When you hear me say to someone in the future, go and find your bliss, I don't care if it's shoeing horses. Go and chase your dreams. Find that happiness that'll make everything else in life oblivious. When you hear me say that, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You'll know that I'm not just blowing smoke. And you'll know that I really mean what I say. Today I was speaking with another friend. Big changes going down in his or her life right now. And I heard those words. I don't know, man. I just need to walk away from this corporate life. I think I want to do stand-up comedy. And I laughed. I did. I was like, but I could tell that my friend was 100% serious. So I replied with, now that was actually funny. Write it down. You've just written your first joke. Now go and find your bliss. And my friend said, you know what? I'm going to do it. I want to make people laugh. Yes, the phone conversation was real. But for some reason, I thought my friend was going to say, I want to shoe horses. Now go and find your bliss. Do it. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight on this program, I'm finding my bliss because Don Schmitt returns for the 75th anniversary of Roswell with Roswell Revisited. Tomorrow night is Fader Night with open lines all night long. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer and UnX Networks. Race Hobbs. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'll be right back after this short break with our guest, Don Schmitt. Stay right there.
This is Nicole Church, daughter of you-know-who, and you're listening to Fade to Black on JimmyChurchRadio.com and the Game Changer Network.
You're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the X.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net.
Introducing the Game Changer blend from Rivermoon Coffee that delivers a customized blend made specifically for the Fadernauts. If the game is rigged, change the game. It's a bolder cup with some bite. Game Changer is the coffee of choice for those that prefer an organic dark roast that is slightly lighter and milder, but it's still dark. With wild notes of pecans and chocolate with a rich, balanced, full-bodied cup that is roasted to perfection for a great coffee to start your day, as an after-dinner coffee or anywhere in between. Artisan, small batch roasted to perfection. USDA certified organic, all Rivermoon coffee is freshly roasted and packaged in the USA. Just go to rivermooncoffee.com or click on the banners over on our site and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. rivermooncoffee.com.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can get our podcast for just $2 per month. All you have to do is click on the podcast banner over at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, folks. It's troubling times, and fear is pushing emotions, which in turn pushes health the wrong direction. Do you ever get an ache because life is uneasy? Try Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. Life Change Tea works on your digestive tract, helping to move food through quicker and comfortably so your health is spot on. Life Change Tea may not help with world issues, but it will help with your digestive issues. A glass a day helps keep the intruders away. So, change your life today. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. If your health game is off, get on by ordering Life Change Tea. Getthetea.com. And while you're on our site, look around at the great non-GMO organic supplements. And if you're a sales shopper, go to our specials page and see what's for you. I've been drinking the tea for 12 years and I'm sure glad for its health benefits. Again, that's getthetea.com. Getthetea.com. The tea that makes you go.
Do you have an interest in the paranormal? Then you'll love the unxnetwork.com. The X is your streaming audio and video for everything supernatural, strange, and mysterious, like UFOs, Bigfoot, ghosts, and so much more. From hosts like Jimmy Church, Whitley Strieber, Micah Hanks, and Christina Gomez. Visit the unxnetwork.com show page for a complete list of all the paranormal programs you'll find on the X. Be sure to follow us on Twitter for updates at KUNXDB. Follow our Facebook group, UNX Network. Find the podcast on Spotify, iHeart, Audible, and Apple Podcast. It's time.
It's new.
It's the X.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Find your bliss. Find your bliss. Don Schmitt found his. Tonight, Don Schmitt is with us. We are doing Roswell Revisited tonight. He's the former director of the J. Allen Hynek Center for UFO Studies in Chicago, where he served as director of special investigation for 10 years. Prior to that time, he was a special investigator for the late... wait a minute. I've got two bios here. Wait a minute. Or Don lived in a parallel universe. I'm just saying, in both of those, he was the director for J. Allen Hynek. He's the author of hundreds of articles about UFOs, as well as the co-author of 6 best-selling books. I have them all. About the UFO Crash at Roswell, The Truth About the UFO Crash at Roswell, Witness to Roswell, Revisited Edition, Inside Area 51, The Secret History of Wright, Patterson, and Coverup of Roswell. The links for all of Don's books are up in social media and, of course, over at JimmyChurchRadio.com. I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black the one and only Don Schmitt. Don.
Jimmy, be back. One correction. I was a co-director at the J. Allen Hynek Center for UFO Studies.
You were the co-director. Yes. So who is the director?
Well, presently, that would be Dr. Mark Rodiger. Who would be scientific director as well as the director of the Center for UFO Studies. Actually, and then after Dr. Hynek had passed away, we renamed it the J. Allen Hynek Center for UFO Studies.
Correct. Oh, maybe that is... See, I can't even read my own words. That's what I wrote. Man, I'm telling you. What do they say? What do they say, Don? I know you're experiencing this. First the mind, then the body.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you reach a certain age, it's all looking back. But no, you and I are both still looking very much forward.
Let's hope so.
Best is still yet to come.
Yeah, yes. And we're going to be hanging out in Roswell again this year, and I look forward to that. This is a big deal. Now, I wanted to ask you this, finding your bliss, and I like to talk about this a lot. And you've had such an interesting life. Have you found your bliss?
my bliss, and I don't even use that word as much as my position is that the schooling never ends. That every day I try to experience, try to learn something new, and then at the end of the day, I look back and I go through, the 16 hours that I tried to give it my best, and where I succeeded, where I failed, and then learn by what I failed by. And so, no, bliss is a state of mind. It's just like happiness, in that people so often look from outside sources, and I'm fortunate in that I look to myself. If I can't produce the end result that I expect, or I would like to see, I don't rely on anybody else to do it for me.
Sure. But I see you are a happy, you know what, I could be way wrong. Maybe I should talk to your wife. But you appear happy and that you are doing exactly what you want to do. And I guess that's my question.
And very serendipitously, because for having come into this as quite the skeptic, and especially with the entire Roswell affair, that when we first decided, and when I say we, it was then my chosen partner, Kevin D. Randall, when we strategized, and it was before the board of directors at QFOS. We sat in Chicago, and we plotted out, our game plan. And it was fully expecting that we would make, a single weekend jaunt down to the land of enchantment, New Mexico, and wrap this up. That we'd come away convinced that this was nothing more than a weather balloon device, as the government still maintains after 75 years, or something just as conventional. And I guess, to use your word, part of that bliss is the fact that we were wrong.
You're right.
That we came away after that first weekend, and it was like, we can't get back down here fast enough.
Right. I have to laugh at that. Yeah. Yes, I totally get that. That's one of the best things I've had any guest say. For you to just state so emphatically that the best part of the trip was that we were wrong, right? I mean, that's extraordinary. Can I ask you a question before we move on? Because
anything you want tonight, Jimmy.
Okay, I want you to turn around and turn around to your right. Who is in that picture next to the door? Next to the door. Look up, Don. The door.
Right up the door, that's actor Roy Thinnis.
That's Roy Thinnis, isn't it?
From the Invaders TV series.
That's from the Invaders TV series.
And Roy and I, we've known each other now personally for, approaching 40 years.
Yeah. You and I have talked about him many times. And I mean, to this day, I've watched the complete series, every season, probably a dozen times, which is, that says a lot, because there's a lot of episodes there. Probably the best UFO TV series ever made.
And we did the book Touched by Roswell, and Roy graced us. He wrote, the foreword, and he got very personal, and it was like, oh my God, I had no idea that, I had impacted his life as much as, he wrote. And I assured him, Roy, it's the exact opposite, that you have influence, you have, as far as steered more people into this subject by that TV series, and the fact that you stood behind it, that you came across as a believer, as someone who was championing the cause, as trying to prove that we were being invaded, that we were being infiltrated, that they took on our human characteristics, and that's how they were able to get away with this very soft kill invasion, so to speak. And unfortunately, unlike The Fugitive, which preceded The Invaders by Quinn Martin, same production company, they never had an ending. There was never a finale.
No, there wasn't, and you kept waiting for it too, because he was on He was on this trail, season after season after season. I'll tell you, I'm going to tell you something. I was a Roy stalker. Okay, now I'm coming clean. Can I come clean? We're live on the air.
And I'll be happy to pass it on to him next time we speak.
There was a rumor when I lived in Pasadena that he lived in Pasadena. And I was like, really? Yeah. And I always kept my eye out. I never ran into him, but I was told that he lived in Pasadena. Does he still live there?
No, he is from Chicago.
Right.
Originally.
Yes.
And then when he did The Invaders, he was the highest paid actor at ABC at that time. And he lived in Bel Air.
Uh-huh.
And then he lived in LA after that, and then he had moved to New York. He was commuting back and forth, and he was even on the soap One Life to Live for a number of years. And that's when we first met, when I met him at his apartment on the west side of Central Park.
So I was looking for a ghost. See, this you gotta love the urban myth of things, and it was something that I never forgot, that he lives. Somebody had pointed, like, he lives on that hill. And I was like, really? And so anyway.
Quick story. This was a real hoot. Now, do you remember in the TV series, The Invaders, one of the signs, what gave them away, was the mutated pinky.
Yes.
The mutated pinky. That was the thing that he was always on the lookout for in his character of David Vincent. And he had picked me up from the airport, LAX, on one occasion. And I was riding in the back seat of his Jaguar. And we are driving through Beverly Hills, and a car full of people all at once approach us. And they drive by us, and the driver reaches out the window and extends the pinky.
Shut up.
So in other words, they recognized Roy, so they recognized his car. And I asked him, does that happen often? And he goes, all the time.
People come up and show half a finger.
They show that,
Wow. Man, I'm going to go back and watch the complete series again. So incredible.
We need to get him on your show.
I would love to have him on the show. Are you kidding? There's the intro to the show, and for those of you out there in the audience, we're talking about The Invaders, and I'm going to guess and say 65, 66, 67, 68, right in there.
67, 68.
67, 68. And in the intro to the show was this little nod. I'm going to say Adamski.
Yes, the ship.
The ship. So they show the ship taking off.
Landing, actually.
What's that?
It was landing.
Landing, and but you see the three domes underneath the ship.
Right.
It is, and it's the classic. It's the classic. Yeah, the Adamski flying saucer, and it's like in the front of my head. So, man, I just love that show, man. I love that show. Every episode, especially when I was a kid, I was like, come on, man.
See, we've been, and who gave me the idea was Don Most from Happy Days. And Don's also a good friend. And a couple of years ago, they did a script reading of one of the unaired Happy Days episodes. And they had, it was Ron Howard, and it was Henry Winkler, and it was Don Most, and it was Anson Williams, Marion Ross. They were all part of that. And I thought, oh my God, for all the failed efforts in bringing The Invaders back, and we were close on 2 occasions with ABC, with a new pilot as far as to pick up where we left off, that type of thing. And I finally thought, as Roy's got older now, what if we were to do a finale as just a script reading? Roy, reprising, that role as they, and with his voice still sounding very much like it did back at that time. So it's just a matter of us sitting down and writing it. But let's just say we've been talking about it now for a couple of years.
It must have been, as a script writer, a fun show to do. because every episode, there was this challenge, and he finds himself. There was man, we could just talk about the invaders all night. Let's forget about Roswell. Like he pulls into a desert town, or he's in some town. He goes in. He's at the local company office. He goes in. He gets into the boardroom, and the president of the company is missing a finger. And now he goes outside of town. He finds a secret UFO base in the side of a mountain, and he goes in and it's just like, it was so much fun. And man, I just miss the invaders.
And obviously, Roy told me many anecdotes. Many like Andrew McIntyre was the cinematographer on the series, and McIntyre had served during World War II, so he knew of a lot of pilots. He knew of a lot of officers who had confided to him about UFO experiences, and he took Roy aside in the very early episodes of the series and told him that we're going to take this serious. We're going to take this series seriously. We're going to treat it seriously. We're going to treat it as though we're going to have the audience actually guessing, is this based on reality or not? Is this something that they're subtly trying to, subliminally trying to tell us without creating panic, without, presenting it as, reality, that type of thing.
Well, that you bring up a really great point, in that the whole series, the underlying tone of it is that you just don't know who. You don't, and it's everybody.
It's everybody. You can get on a bus. You can go. You could go sit down at a restaurant. You could just get into the back of a cab, and all of a sudden you notice the driver with the mutated pinky. And it was just, but it was a classic case of paranoia.
Yes, man.
Idea that you didn't know who you could trust, who you could believe in, and then for those that you did. And then at the end of the episode, they turned out to be one of them, that type of thing.
It was awesome. And I don't know who did the intro to the show, but the invaders, right?
Right. Alien beings from a dying planet, their destination. Man. Wonderful.
Loved it. All right.
We'll do it. No, I'll talk to Wright. We'll set it up.
Man, that would mean so much to me. Life will come full circle if that happens, and I can complete my bliss and my journey as a stalker. Yeah, as a stalker. Yeah, absolutely.
I'll let you tell him that story, though. That's yours.
What if he says, I did live in a house in Pasadena? What if he says that?
Wow. Well, and I don't claim to know every day of Roy Finnis's life, but it's very possible. Very possible.
Now, as I have discussed on the show all week, going back to our conversation last week, which is we talk about so many things on the show, and we talk about Roswell every time you're on, of course, but we never tell the story of Roswell, and we haven't done that maybe never. And if we did anything close to that, it would have been many, many, many years ago.
Yes.
And that the audience today hears about Roswell, but they may not know. They know it's significant, but we have so many new people that are new to the subject because of what's happening today. And so they've heard about Roswell, but they don't know about Roswell. And I will say this in kindness. Oh, by the way, John Lear passed away last night.
And did not know that.
Yeah, I just got word right before the show. And
okay.
Yeah. And
limited contact with John through the years. I actually was more fascinated with his father, Bill Lear, the actual creator of the Lear jet. And then because I had worked with the late Chester Lytle, who had actually worked with Bill Lear with the CIA, and to listen to them talk about, and I would talk to John's mother,
Dorothy.
It began with that. Mayo or something like that.
Right.
And she would confirm that her husband, her late husband Bill, and that Chet Lido, they used to fly spy missions with the new jet, where they would skirt, the Russian border, that type of thing, and just see how far they could infiltrate, and then be able to just scoot away with this new jet that they were having the time of their life with.
Yeah, what a family history there. Right, what a family history.
Another.
I'm just saddened by it. I mean,
another legend within the field. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally saddened by it. In our conversation last week talking about this, what I wanted to mention was there was a period, if you go back to the very first broadcast of Coast to Coast with Art Bell,
yes,
that Art didn't know anything about Roswell. And it was, Roswell starting to really swell, and the books are coming out, and the community was also learning on the fly because the information was coming in. It was you and everybody else, and that Stanton Friedman, and these books are coming out, but even Art back then, he was asking questions for the first time, and he's trying to learn, and it was a very fascinating time. Not only for the UFO community, but for Coast to Coast, where this was all just, starting to catch fire. And the audience out there that doesn't know much about Roswell is going to experience some of that tonight, where they don't know, and they're going to get to hear this for the first time. So let's back up and start directly, because we have a lot to go through tonight. Again, Don doesn't have notes. I don't have notes. I get to test Don's memory and my own. But let's go back. Of course, we have Kenneth Arnold. We can start there. Kenneth Arnold has... That's right. He has his sighting. And then 2 weeks later, everything goes down in Roswell. There are some confusion of the dates, and there was a storm that was in, and things that happened.
Right.
So the actual date of the crash, right? That date, because let's go to that. Do you have a date of the actual crash?
Yes. And I often start out by even just doing a little historic background of New Mexico, of that region, that less people think that this just happened out in the middle of the desert by happenstance, and that there was no attraction, no beacon. And I always point out, especially when I'm lecturing on college campuses with the learned faculty present, I'll often ask the question, now, where was the first atomic bomb detonated?
Right.
And you'd be surprised how many of the professors, well, of course, Japan.
Oh, no, yeah, right.
About
Trinity.
2 hours west of Roswell.
Right.
And then you had all the ongoing atomic research at Los Alamos, and you had all the testing of the captured German V-2 rockets at the White Sands Proving Grounds. And then south of Roswell, you had the Roswell Army Airfield, headquarters of the 509 Bomb Wing, first atomic bomb squadron in the world, the elite within the military at that time, where they selected, it was a composite unit, where they selected the best officers, the best pilots, crew, doctors, nurses. If you swept a broom on that base back in 1947, it was because you were the best sweeper in the entire U.S. military, because you all had a top security clearance for the bomb, for the atomic bomb.
Gotcha.
So Project Blue Book had determined, the most famous of the 3 official investigations of the UFO phenomena, that there were more UFO sightings in New Mexico at that time than anywhere else, probably in the world. It was as though someone else was very interested in our military potential. And what better place? And we've long speculated, we've even talked about this ourselves, Jimmy, that even that first detonation at Trinity in New Mexico, is still traversing out through the galaxy. It's like a beacon that is still an intelligence signal. That look at, these guys down on the third rock from this sun, that have been now experimenting with atomic, energy, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so was that the very signal that then attracted someone to come and check us out? So late evening of July 2nd, based on the Stallion Network radar, as far as weather records, and from everything we've been able to put together from eyewitnesses, their work schedules leading up to the 4th of July weekend, there had been a sighting by Mr. and Mrs. Daniel Wilmot down on the west side of Roswell that they witnessed in broad daylight, a dome disk that was moving to the northwest of town, moving up to that general area late that afternoon. So we have pretty much surmised, based on all that information, that it was late evening, July 2nd, that ranchers heard what sounded like an explosion between the thunderclaps. And it's the next morning, early morning of July 3rd, that the ranch foreman by the name of W.W., he went by the name Mac Brazel, in the company of a 7-year-old neighbor boy, Timothy D. Proctor, that they came upon an area of the strangest wreckage of this material that they had never seen before, especially Brazel. He had never seen anything like this. And neither had his neighbors, neither had the hired hands, neither had even a state police officer by the name of Robert Scroggins from Lincoln County, where this happened, to take place. No one had ever seen anything like this before. And it covered an area of almost a mile long.
Now, Mac, at the time, I've got 30 seconds before the break, so we'll just do this really quick.
Sure.
But the first thing through his mind is not necessarily UFOs or ETs, but who is going to clean this crap up?
Exactly. There was so much of it. And prior to this, it was a matter of just gathering it up, tossing it into the back of the pickup truck, and that was the extent of it. But this was beyond. It's like, my God, I don't have any hired hands. I'm the supervisor on this ranch, 700 head of cattle and sheep, and I sure don't have time to spend now days gathering up every last shard of this wreckage. And where cattle and sheep are notoriously like goats, they eat up everything in their path. And so I got to make sure, I clean this up as soon as possible. But again, who's responsible? Who's going to come out and clean this all up?
Let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, the one and only Don Schmitt. It is the 75th anniversary of Roswell. Tonight, it is Roswell Revisited. It's going to be a great conversation. Stay right there. We're going to pick up where we left off on July 3rd. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black on the NX and Game Changer Networks. We'll be right back. More with Don after this short break. Stay with us.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Your 1 million gigawatt paranormal powerhouse, KUNX-DB, The X.
This is Billy Carson with ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Forbidden Knowledge TV has just reached its 1-year anniversary. That's right, 1 year. And as a show of appreciation, we are giving all new subscribers a free 30-day trial of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. That's 30 days to binge watch thousands of movies, documentaries, conferences, workshops, lectures, yoga classes, meditation courses, and so much more. So log on to ForbiddenKnowledge.tv from your computer or mobile device, or get the Forbidden Knowledge TV app on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon, iTunes, or Google Play today, and use coupon code 30daysfree. That's coupon code 30 days free on ForbiddenKnowledge.tv today.
Because you never got that pony you always wanted. Damn it. Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network.
Listen, I know, and you know, that you've always wanted your first crystal skull. Or maybe you're a collector just like me, but you just don't know where to go to find the real thing. Then I met Carolyn Ford over at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. Carolyn is the guardian of Einstein, one of the most respected ancient crystal skulls in the world. All of her unique skulls have been imprinted sitting with Einstein in his sacred lodge and are carved from the finest gemstone and materials. Imprinting is the process of receiving the ancient wisdom from the master skull or master computer. Einstein, the ancient crystal skull. To see Carolyn's current collection of crystal skulls, just visit her store at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com or click on the banner over on our site. Don't forget to use the promo code Jimmy at checkout to receive 10% off of your order today. That's promo code Jimmy. Finding your first or next crystal skull is easy. Just visit EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com.
Hi, Race Hobbs with the X. Obviously, if you're listening to this, you have an interest in unexplained phenomena like ghosts, Bigfoot, and UFOs. And by now, you know that we have our own X blog, the UnX newsletter, and the UnX magazine quarterly. But most of you don't know that we have started our very own paranormal conference. And this year, for safety, this 2-day XCon will be virtual, so you can attend from the comfort of your home. XCon presenters include Whitley Strieber, Micah Hanks, Margie Kay and Preston Dennett, Lisa Martin and Wayne Lawrence, Lee Spiegel, Debbie Zagelmeyer, Dan Terry, Kate Grabowski, and Ray Hernandez. There will also be a live paranormal investigation by the Riverside, Iowa Paranormal Team. So come hang out with us in the safety of home as we set out to explain the unexplained Friday, May 13th and Saturday the 14th, 2022. And tickets are on sale now. Go to unxnetwork.com. That's unxnetwork.com.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to jimmychurchradio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. We're of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And I'm Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. And you're listening to Jimmy Church. The Revolution.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can become an official Fadernaut by just going to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hello, this is Serena Wright Taylor from Conscious Life Expo, and you're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, who holds the Lucky Pony record for the best astrological chart since 1963. True story.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Don Schmitt is with us. It is the 75th anniversary this year of Roswell. Tonight, it's Roswell Revisited. We're going to do the whole thing A to Z. And now, right before the break, we threw the underarm softball pitch. That is July 2nd. Was the date of the crash. July 3rd, Mac Brazel heads out with a young compadre. They stumble upon the debris field. That was July 3rd. I want to jump ahead in the timeline a little bit and go to Mac Brazel driving to town. And so what date was that? When did he show up complaining?
That was Sunday, July 6th. He made about a 65-mile drive into Roswell, and he didn't go to the military. He rather went to the courthouse. He went to the sheriff, George Wilcox, And he plunked some of the wreckage right down on his desk. And I have a whole pasture, I have a whole field of this. And, I demand that somebody, come out and clean this all up. And who should call up? The sheriff's department at that very time, but a reporter by the name of Frank Joyce from radio station KGFL. Pick up some, late-breaking scuttle for his next newscast, that type of thing. And the sheriff says, I think there's somebody here you might like to talk with. And Joyce would tell us, he would describe that the voice on the other end, and he didn't get the name at first, but that he was quite agitated. He was quite upset about all this wreckage. And according to Joyce, then he became more and more somber, more serious, and he started talking about it was horrible. It was horrible. You wouldn't believe it was horrible. And then, well, what are you talking about? You're talking about wreckage. And he kept going, no, at another location, it was horrible. And then what was horrible? Well, it was the stench. It was terrible. It was horrible. And then Joyce asked him, what are you talking about? Bodies? Well, they're going to launch possibly, something with those rockets over at the White Sands Proving Ground. Maybe it was a monkey. And to which Joyce said that the voice fired back, they weren't any damn monkeys, they weren't human. So that part of it is consistent with the fact that it was a day or two later, after discovering the debris field, that Brazel, in the company of his son Vernon and Timothy D. Proctor, son of a hired hand by the name of Sidney Jack Wright, and we believe it was a young girl, a teenage girl also at that time by the name of Eddington. And that, as so often, especially after bad storms, they would search out for down livestock, the cattle and sheep. It's high desert. The lightning actually strikes the ground. And so the animals are like lightning rods out there in the high desert. And so they would watch for circling birds, hawks, eagles, that type of thing, suggesting, a downed animal. And that's where 2.5 miles southeast of the debris field, they discovered atop a bluff, which we've had witnesses take us to. And as Timothy D. Proctor, before he died, when he took his late mother out there, Loretta, all he would admit was, as he told her, this is where Mac found something else. That's how he put it. And
so if we are going to understand, I'm so glad that we're doing this show, that I think that most people imagine the original debris field was the crash site.
Right.
The craft came in, crashed, I think put a gouge in the ground, right?
Well, actually, it was a mid-air explosion. Even the head of intelligence, Major Jesse Marcel, when he first arrived at the scene, his first reaction was, my God, there's so much material. And then by the pattern in which the debris was fanned to cover that area of almost a mile long,
right,
said they immediately determined that it had to be a mid-air explosion, that something had happened to cause it to break up.
So where Mac first came upon the debris field, that was debris from the explosion. Then
Correct.
The craft continued another 2 miles from the original debris field that everybody has seen reenacted, right, with all the troops out there and picking. That the craft then crashed into the ground 2.5 miles away.
Well, actually, no. 3 distinct sites. The debris field,
right,
a secondary body site 2.5 miles southeast of the debris field, and then closer to Roswell, 35 to 40 miles north of Roswell, a final impact site. So, and that would be more of an egg-shaped size of a Volkswagen Beetle, as described by both military and civilian. A pod, a capsule, whether it was the internal cabin of the original craft, but that's where the additional bodies and a survivor were recovered. So again, 3 distinct sites.
So how did, we have 3 sites, and Brazel's in town complaining. Joyce now gets wind of it.
Correct.
Then somebody reaches out to Roswell Army Airfield.
That was the sheriff.
Did that happen on the same day?
Yes.
That was on July 6th.
Because what Joyce strongly urged Brazel to do was to contact the military. This sounds like a military situation. And whether they are aware or not, you're the one person who can take them to the very location. So you need to contact, especially the 509th. They already were famous for having essentially ended World War II.
Right.
Two droppings of the atomic bomb over Japan. And so it was then the sheriff, and who should pick up the phone at the base but none other than the very head of intelligence. He was at the PX. He was having a sandwich at the time. So it was the head of the 509th Intelligence, Major Jesse Marcel Sr. And he drives out, goes to the courthouse, he examines some of the wreckage, and he too is totally befuddled. He's never seen anything like this before. Now, keeping in mind, Jimmy, this is a 4th of July weekend. Most of the officers, most of the base personnel are home on leave.
Mm-hmm.
It's important enough that Marcel goes back to the base and he immediately alerts the very base commander, Colonel William Blanchard, who happened to live on the west side. It's the house. It's a ranch brick house that's still there. And he went right to the base commander and informed him about, this debris field, this wreckage, and more. And the Blanchard could have just, dispatched a couple of enlisted men, humor the rancher, just go check it out, that type of thing. But no, he dispatches Marcel, as well as a counterintelligence officer by the name of Captain Sheridan Cabot, in the event it's something foreign. Because as Blanchard himself would say afterwards, at first we thought it had to be Russian,
mm-hmm.
because none of us could identify the material. But then we quickly realized it wasn't. And the point being, nothing has been reported missing. They haven't been testing anything, that they are on standby, that if anybody reports anything that has gone off course or has gone missing, that type of thing, be on the lookout. And the point being, if it's not ours, then whose is it? What does this now represent? So he sends out Marcel and Cabot to follow Brazel and to investigate this firsthand.
Now, it's 65 miles away. Did they do all of this on July 6th?
Correct.
Okay.
And by the time they would arrive at the ranch, the sun was already setting.
Sure.
So they would spend the night, as Marcel would describe, at the Hines house. That was a one-room shack about 3 miles north of the debris field. Marcel would talk about how they had a can of cold beans and some crackers that night. And it was the next morning that Brazel led them to the debris field. And again, as I described, that first reaction, my God, look at how much debris and how it covers such a long swath of land, and that it must have been a mid-air explosion. They would then start to check with radar. As far as radiation, they would check as far as with a Geiger meter, if there was any radiation present, and then they proceeded to gather up as much of the wreckage as they could. They filled up 2 vehicles. Cabot was driving a Jeep carryall with a box in back, and Marcel was driving his 42 Buick convertible. So they loaded up 2 vehicles, and there was still so much wreckage out there that it would take days and dozens of troops to finish the cleanup.
Well, okay, so we'll get back to that. So they depart, and they didn't go to the body site, right? They were only at the debris field.
We don't know that.
Right, okay.
We don't know. Because obviously the fallback with wreckage is that you can always explain away the most exotic material as something advanced, as something that we're working on its tops. The moment you start talking about non-human bodies, how do you put that genie back in the bottle?
No, you can't. But my question is, because of that, now they head back to the base, right? And they've got the debris with them. At that point, was Marcel talking about bodies?
No.
He was not.
Because Marcel, being the senior officer, had sent Cabot on ahead because he had other plans. The Marcels lived off the base at that time. They were on 7th Street, a little over 10 miles away from the front gate. And as you certainly fondly remember, because you talked to him, you met with him.
Yes.
Jesse Marcel Jr.
Yep.
How they're roused during the middle of the night. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, and he's the only child, and he and their mother, Viad, his mother, they're taken in the kitchen, and here's all this wreckage scattered on the kitchen floor. And Jesse Jr. examines some of the wreckage, and he sees an I-beam structure of the same wreckage, same material. And it has these symbols that ran the length of each strip. Nothing that as we've learned, no one has ever been able to decode those symbols. But nonetheless, it was important enough that Jess Sr. wanted his son to see this before he was sure of it all classified top secret. He'd never had the chance again.
And he also had a chance to play with the memory metal.
Precisely. Something I don't know that we ever even talked about, Jimmy, is the fact that in May of 1990, we had the late Dr. John Watkins, who was professor emeritus at the University of Montana in Missoula. And Dr. Watkins was famous for getting the Hillside Strangler to confess his crimes under regression. So he went into, detailed descriptions as far as of each assault, of each murder, that type of thing. So we were fortunate enough because Dr. Marcel Jr. was an ear, nose, and throat surgeon up in Helena at that time.
Montana.
In Montana, and Dr. Watkins was right there, and he agreed to do the regression. We wanted to take Dr. Marcel, Jesse Marcel Jr., back to that early morning of Tuesday, July 8th, to have him relive the experience. And we did this in front of a film crew from the Today Show, from NBC. Now, it was fascinating to watch because it was like professional resistance, doctor against doctor.
Right.
Because Jess Jr. was a hard nut to crack. It took the third session. We started early afternoon. We went in the late afternoon, and it wasn't until early evening that he finally got Jess back to that time. And what was so totally fascinating to watch, Jimmy, was that Dr. Marcel, Jesse Jr., was acting this out. He was reliving it in the first person. It was as though it was happening right before us, right before our eyes.
Wow.
And the way his father kept saying flying saucer, pieces of a flying saucer. There was never any question about this being maybe a plane, an aircraft, a rocket. There was certainly no discussion of it being remnants of a weather balloon kite. So it kept coming back to wreckage from a flying saucer crash. Well, Jimmy, what we didn't expect, what we didn't anticipate was his dad, Major Marcel, who had retired a lieutenant colonel. We didn't anticipate the fact that his dad had just passed away 4 years before, just 4 years. And when Dr. Watkins brought Dr. Marcel out of the regression, out of the trance, and he opened his eyes and he looked from one side of the room to the other and he went, "Dad, Dad," and then the tears started streaming. It was like, oh my God, wow. We just caused him to lose his dad all over again.
Wow.
But the significance of it was, Jimmy, is that it was that real to him. He, as I said, he was reliving it exactly as his subconscious, recreated it and as he described it for us in the presence of that film crew. They never did show it on the Today Show. The co-host of the show, Brian Gumbel, nixed it, said it was too controversial, and then he added it was too convincing. So it was never aired.
Now, things at this point traveled pretty quick. I mean, things started moving fast.
Right.
That after that night, at the house with Major Marcel and his son Jesse Jr. That day passes. He's now got the debris in the back of his car.
Correct.
He makes his way back to the Roswell Army Airfield. By the way, we keep saying Army Airfield, so for everybody to understand the timeline of our military, at that time we didn't have an Air Force. It wasn't the Air Force yet. It was still the Army Air Force. So, okay, so they go back. He goes back to the airfield. And if you want to fill in something here, you can. But the next part of the timeline for me, which I think is most important, is now we get Hout involved. There is a press release that is generated and released. Take us through the timeline of that with Hout, who was I guess he was the PR person for the base, right?
The public information officer.
Right.
Yeah, Walter G. Hott. And Marcel arrived back at the base, as you described, because that was his mission. That was his assignment. Cabot had already arrived, late that evening before. Marcel even spent the rest of the night at home. He cleaned up a little bit, and then he reported back to the base. They moved up the staff meeting a half hour that morning, and pretty much it was spelled out exactly what they were going to do. And at noon, Mountain Time.
Because this is now, for the timeline for everybody, we're only at July 7th. Okay, so the crash happened July 2nd. Brazel finds it July 3rd, makes it to town July 6th. They go out, they collected debris. They're back at the Army, the overnight at the house, right? So now we're at July 7th.
No, we're at July 8th.
Well, the Roswell Daily Record was July 8th, right?
That's right. That's right.
So they got the press. This is why when I say things are clicking,
yes,
things are moving very, very fast at this point.
Absolutely.
And Hout's name was H-A-U-T. Am I correct?
Yes.
Hout.
And he changed it just to make it more spellable because they were misspelling it through all the press accounts at that time. So he finally settled on H-A-U-T.
Right. Right. H-A-U-T. Okay, so they need to generate this press release. How did that come about?
Well, what had happened while Marcel and Cabot were at the debris field that Monday, filling up those two vehicles, there were reports of the impact site north of town. We believe it was a team of archaeologists from Western Tech University under the direction of Professor William Curry Holden, and that they were working in that general area. They came upon the impact site, and they too reported it to the sheriff. It was one of the reasons that we very early on, Jimmy, why did the sheriff go north of town? Why did representatives of the fire department also venture north of town, whereas the debris field is in a separate county? They would have had no jurisdiction. It kept pointing back to something much closer to Roswell. And as it turns out, we were absolutely correct. And especially when members of the Sheriff Wilcox family described that he detailed to them how he went out to investigate, and he saw the remains of the craft. He saw the bodies. He saw the survivor. You have firefighter Dan Dwyer, the same situation. They describe seeing the craft and the bodies. So the problem that the military is now facing is that Brazel has already talked to the press. He's talked to Frank Joyce at KGFL, the radio station, and he's talked about the bodies. And remember, we said a moment ago, you can't put that genie back in the bottle.
Can't do it.
So what they needed to do was use the debris field as the perfect diversion. They acknowledged it. They admitted it. We have it. We've recovered it as far as through the cooperation of the rancher, who they don't name. They put out the press release. They waited until noon to avoid all the morning newspapers. And also by coming out at noon, the hope was they would have also missed most of the afternoon papers, which already were going to press. And thankfully, it was the San Francisco Chronicle, the lone newspaper that held back and managed to actually print out that very press release, that they acknowledged they got one. We captured a flying saucer. Now, no mention of remains, no mention of bodies, but the only person they name in the press release is Major Jesse Marcel, who is loaning the craft, the disc, for analysis at higher headquarters.
Let's take our break right here. Let's get that in. And when we come back, the significance of what is now happening, not only with the press release going out, we have the famous radio broadcast that are now hitting the airwaves, and literally every reporter in the country is traveling to Roswell, New Mexico for this breaking story. Let's pick all of this up when we come back. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Don Schmitt is with us. 75th anniversary of Roswell for Roswell Revisited. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
You're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the X.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
This is Jimmy Church. Jason Martell's book, Knowledge Apocalypse 10-Year Anniversary Edition, is now available. Most ancient cultures speak of a time when their gods visited them. They never say their gods came from across the ocean or from the mountains. They always came down from the skies. Was ancient man visited by gods or extraterrestrials? We have not been told the full truth about our human past. There was a time when all the ancient cultures lived amongst beings they considered their gods. The search for truth leads us down the path of learning where the ETs might come from and why they are here. To understand some of these advanced topics and learn the truth about human origins, buy the new book from Jason Martell, Knowledge Apocalypse, now in its 10-year anniversary edition, available on Amazon.com by clicking on the banners over on our site, or simply visit JasonMartell.com. That's JasonMartell.com. Do you want to be an official Fade or Not? Of course you do. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Just go to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com. Fade or Nots. When you think about the future of our country and where we're headed, do you wonder about the food supply? I do. Disruptions in the food supply chain could be disastrous, and they usually occur with little warning. That's why the smartest thing you can do today is to stockpile emergency food, water, and other essentials. I personally recommend My Patriot Supply. They're the nation's largest emergency preparedness company, serving millions of customers for more than a decade. In fact, they're the only source my family trusts for our preparedness plan. You should too. Right now, save 20% off a full 4-week supply of delicious meals that provide 2,000 calories a day. Saving 20% helps too, doesn't it? Especially now. So go to preparewithjimmy.com and get ready. That's preparewithjimmy.com. There's no time to lose. Do it now.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Don Schmitt is with us, the 75th anniversary of Roswell. Tonight's Roswell Revisited. And I'm going to reveal something to everybody right now. And I want to thank Don Schmitt for this. That's Don playing the guitar during the break. And I, you know, and thank you for writing that song, Don. I didn't know that you had that kind of talent.
I did play piano years ago. I never played guitar. So.
You couldn't even respond to that. He couldn't even just laugh. Now, here's the deal. And I know that I've said this to you many times before, but it's worth repeating. In my estimation, and we can take all the witnesses, and we can take all the evidence, and we can take everything there is about Roswell, but the most significant piece of evidence in the entire case is that press release.
Yes.
That's would you agree with that?
I would wholeheartedly agree with that, because for this simple reason, it was a calculated risk. They essentially had to create a straw man, build it up, because they couldn't just flatly deny that something had happened, something had been recovered of an extraordinary nature. They had to go along with it, but then they, in typical military fashion, which they had mastered, the technique during World War II, was you build it up, then you tear it down. And
yes, I would agree with that. And I would agree with that only because of what transpired immediately afterwards.
Right.
But one thing is for sure, it's the most top secret base on planet Earth, number one. Right. Number two, all of the intelligence of the world, all the physicists and the scientists, everybody lived in New Mexico. The most important laboratories and research and everything else on planet Earth was happening at that time in the state, it still does actually, in the state of New Mexico. And when they wrote that press release, it was poured over, line by line, word for word. This wasn't some willy-nilly thing that was just released out to the world. It was signed off on and approved. Yeah. Right, and
you could not be more correct, Jimmy. It was so well thought out, and we need to just digress for a moment quickly. In that, at the very time that Colonel Blanchard, the base commander at Roswell, sends Marcel and Cabot to investigate, what do you think he does? He gets on the phone and he talks to his boss.
Has to.
At least he tries to, and that would be Brigadier General Roger Ramey, head of the 8th Air Force at Fort Worth Army Airfield in Texas. Well, Ramey is in Denton, Texas, for the dedication of an airplane. He's with family. So it's Ramey's chief of staff, Colonel Thomas DeBose, who takes the call. And so, again, demonstrating what we're dealing with here. So you have the base commander at Roswell, head of the 509th, the first atomic bomb squadron in the world. It's important enough that he calls his boss again on a 4th of July weekend.
Right.
And he's unavailable, so he speaks with his aide, Colonel DeBose, and then DeBose contacts Washington. He calls the Pentagon. And who calls him back within an hour? But the assistant or the deputy director of Strategic Air Command, General Clements McMullen, ordering him to have Blanchard fly some of the wreckage immediately to Fort Worth, and there the very base commander, Colonel Al Clark, to strap it to his wrist and fly it immediately to Washington. Washington already has wreckage in hand by late evening, Sunday, July 6th. When does the press release go out? A day and a half later at noon Mountain Time on Tuesday, July 8th. So this is no knee-jerk reaction. This is no overreaction on the part of anyone at Roswell. It's thought out.
Completely.
The wording of the press release is scripted so precisely for a reason.
Now
we have it. There's nothing to see out there. We have the disc. They don't mention the location. They don't mention Brazil, the name of the rancher. And the only one they mention is Major Marcel. And where is Marcel at the time that the press release goes out? He's getting on a plane to fly to Fort Worth for a press conference.
Now, the headline, as we all know today, the famous headline, RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region. Right. And as this goes out, San Francisco Chronicle does the release. This goes out across the United States quickly. And when every reporter in the country gets wind of this, their news director's like, "You're on your way to Roswell." What? You're on your way to Roswell. Now, so that's exactly what happens. But this is the interesting turn of events, because we know that suddenly the Air Force, the Army, the Pentagon, Washington does a complete 180, and they do a complete turn of events. So Marcel's on his way to Fort Worth.
And actually, he was on his way originally to Wright Field in Dayton, Ohio.
Wright Field. We'll circle back to Wright Field. That's such an important play here. But as all of this is going on, Don, now they realize there's got to be a cover-up. And now, in your estimation, because we'll get to the next day in just a bit. But is this the beginning of what the Pentagon learned on how to cover up and how to deal with ET and everything else moving forward for the next 75 years?
What they had going in their favor, Jimmy, is that we started out with the June 24th Kenneth Arnold sighting. And then if any of your listeners, any of your viewers were to go to any public library and pull out that week leading up to Roswell, you would have thought we were being invaded. Banner headline after headline, as far as that these flying discs, and even the very term flying saucer was even coined at that very time.
Right.
And so they were being pressed for answers, and the military couldn't provide answers. And their newspapers were taking polls at the time. And one would think that, well, the vast majority of Americans probably believed that we were dealing with something interplanetary, something from Mars, Venus, off the planet. And it was only about 2%. Most people believed that this had to be a continuation on the atomic bomb theme. New Mexico, this was something else that we were, eventually going to challenge the Soviet Union with. We had this, something new to our arsenal at that time. And so they took a gamble by putting out the press release. But then, as you just described, Marcel is on his way to Wright Field. They change course. They land at Fort Worth. Marcel is ordered to report to General Ramey. He takes a box of wreckage, places it on his desk. Ramey takes him to a map room. They return, and the box is gone, and in its place is a shredded weather balloon kite with a clump of rotting neoprene rubber balloon. So it's rubber, reflective foil, wooden sticks, string, and tape. And there's a hallway full of reporters waiting to see the flying saucer, wreckage from the flying saucer. And Ramey only allows one lone reporter by the name of James Bond Johnson of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram to enter. Marcel was then ordered by Ramey, and we've all seen the famous pictures of Marcel posing, crouched down, holding up a sheet of the flimsy foil.
Marcel's not happy in that photograph, by the way.
No. In fact, he even there's still dust on his shoes from the actual debris field.
Yeah, he's not happy. He's not happy. No. So now, in the interest of time, because now if this isn't crazy enough, all the crazy starts to happen here. So let's get to the crazy. We'll circle back to Wright Field, and we'll get back to the FBI. We'll talk about Ramey, him chomping on that cigar, and everything else that was going on. But now they've got to go out and recover all of the debris, 3 crash sites, and the bodies, a live alien. This all gets back to Roswell. We have a mortuary. We have caskets being built. We've got autopsies being conducted, and everything is happening in real time. So now let's back up. Let's go back to Roswell and the collection, because now we have hundreds of military personnel now on site. We've got trucks, and we're also recovering bodies. What's the process here, and how did everything get back to Roswell Army Airfield?
We have tracked down, for example, the debris field alone. The moment that Marcel and Cabot reported back that early morning of July 8th, that Tuesday morning, they were already dispatching troops to start the cleanup. There already, the day before, there were troops that were sent out to the impact site with the recovery of the craft and the remains, including the survivor. We even tracked down paper boys who were on Main Street, opposite sides, working for the 2 separate newspapers. You had the Roswell Daily Record and the Roswell Daily Dispatch. And they both confirmed how they saw the convoy coming down Main Street with the low boy, with the flatbed, with the tarped craft, the object underneath. Not knowing what was going on, but that it was under heavy guard. And then both of them surmising that, oh my God, that is what was recovered north of town. You have 50 to 60 troops at the debris field who would spend the next 3 full days gathering up every last shard of material. We have, as far as MPs that came in from off of Roswell, came outside of Roswell, like Wright Field and Fitzsimmons in Colorado. We have doctors and nurses that arrived from outside of Roswell. We have photographers like Frederick Benthal, who was a professional photographer with the military and is taken out to, we believe, the debris field, where they had a tent erected, and he was told to take the pictures as they pulled back the tarp, and there were 2 of the bodies underneath. So you have, as you described, as you suggested, Jimmy, that you have all this activity that is now rapidly happening as far as at a sped up effort to contain, to recover every last piece of evidence, with the hope that the balloon press conference in Fort Worth would be accepted, that it would shut this down, and that the cleanup effort would also contain it. They would get everything shipped out of Roswell, and the dust would clear, and it would be mission accomplished. We got away with it.
Now, and everything had, and with the crash sites, the three locations all being north of town, all of the Army vehicles and personnel would have to travel to, I forget the freeway. What number is that?
285.
285, which turns into Main Street, right? Once you're in Roswell. Correct. And drive through town to get to Roswell Army Airfield. Do I have that correct?
Yes, and then we even have witnesses who describe, for example, that when they came to Main and 2nd, that at that time the streetlights, the stoplights, were not on posts; they were cable suspended, and that the truck couldn't clear the cables. So we have descriptions from witnesses who mention how the men jumped out of their Jeeps, and with poles they lifted up the cables so the truck could clear, as they then turned going east on 2nd Street, because they then proceeded to the east gate. They didn't come through the main gate. And coming through the east gate, they crossed the tarmac, and there conveniently is hangar P3, Building 84, which was the B-29 hangar. And it's described that all the wreckage and all the bodies were stored and transited through before they were shipped out. So they avoided the base proper as much as possible. And that too, they kept the personnel at Roswell base out of the picture as much as they could.
An already secret base is now even got a more secret location on the base.
Yes. Correct.
Now, okay, so everything, how long did this process take? How many days?
Things were shipping out already by late evening on July 7th, even before the press release went out. And then through the day, there were truckloads. There was a member of T Squadron by the name of Frank Martinez. Before he died, he described how he drove one of the trucks out to the debris field. He would go through checkpoints, and he would finally get to a final checkpoint where he would be told to get out, and then another driver would get in and then continue on to some undisclosed location, but then he would come back with a loaded truck. Martinez would then get back into the cab, and then his orders were to drive it back down to Roswell.
Right.
So then returning back with another empty truck, and then this process, according to Martinez, went on, in his case, for 3 full days.
3 full days.
He was driving wreckage back to the base.
Now, how many bodies were recovered? We know we had one live...
one survivor.
One survivor. How many bodies?
And then you had 2 at the 2.5 mile from the debris field,
right,
at that particular location. And then you had 2 additional bodies at the impact site. So a total of 4 bodies plus a survivor.
So five in total. Five ETs manning the craft. Okay. The 4 bodies, and this is one of the more interesting and compelling parts of everything when it comes to Roswell is the autopsy and the bodies and what was going on there. So the 4 bodies were taken to P3 first?
Correct.
And so what happened?
Base hospital.
Yeah. Okay. So what happens next at the base hospital? Oh, by the way, can I jump ahead in the story?
Please.
Okay. The nurse.
Yes.
Who was she? And has who was the nurse?
We're pretty convinced the nurse was Adeline Thatton.
Adeline Thatton.
Right. She was a nurse at the base hospital at that time. And she had been transferred to England within weeks after the incident. And she had considered going into the sisterhood prior to going into the nursing corps with the Army. She looked like a young Audrey Hepburn, as described, black hair, nice, beautiful black eyes.
Right.
And she was not killed in a plane crash, as was told, with a number of other nurses, but she did die a few years later of a childhood disease. So all of that was consistent, and specifically with Nurse Thatton.
Okay, so Nurse Thatton, she's a key part to what happens next here. And also, because we're going to tell all of this, who was the red-haired sergeant?
Well, the Air Force, when they came out with first their Project Mogul report in September of 1994, and then their anthropomorphic wooden crash dummy report in May of 1997, they tried to label the red-haired captain, and then there was a black sergeant.
Right.
They came up with a number of possibilities, but to be honest with you, Jimmy, we never felt that there was any relevance into the red-haired captain or black sergeant in the entire Roswell scenario.
Who was allegedly barking orders at the hospital.
And supposedly to mortician Glenn Dennis from the Ballard Funeral Home.
And it's Glenn Dennis's accounts of what was going on at the hospital, which play a big part to this. Okay, so, there's reasons for that. He's got to show up with caskets, right? Tiny caskets, by the way.
Child-sized caskets.
Yes, which you don't actually have a lot of those in stock.
No.
In a small town like Roswell. Okay, so take us to that day at the hospital. The bodies arrive. What happens?
One of the witnesses to the bodies was Miriam Bush. She was the assistant secretary to the administrator at the hospital at that time. And we had other, like Rosemary McManus, who was another nurse at the hospital, told us that they were all essentially told to report back to their living quarters, that they were not to come to the hospital for their normal duties that particular day. Well, Bush was one of them who, as the assistant to the administrator, she remained. And she described how he took her into the examination room. And her first reaction was, my God, these are children, based on the silhouettes on the gurneys under the sheets, that they look that small. And then she observed that one of them moved. And then she was appalled. Then she was truly shocked when she saw that they weren't human. She saw the size of the heads. She saw the eyes open, and that she was witnessing something that all the rumors that they had been hearing were true.
Now, what was the date of the autopsies at the hospital when the bodies arrived?
Well, okay, now, Jimmy, we don't know that there were actual autopsies at the Roswell base hospital because they did not have a morgue at the hospital. And they did not, from all accounts, did not have the equipment, the surgical utensils. And so there's some question as to if something was done. And we do have 2 witnesses to this effect.
Okay.
The Ballard Funeral Home was on contract with the base hospital, and they did have autopsy equipment.
That is correct.
It's been suggested that one of the bodies was taken to the basement of the Ballard Funeral Home.
Now,
what autopsy?
What I want to establish here is the timeline, though.
Right.
What was the date of the bodies arriving at the hospital?
As early as the 7th, even before the press release went out.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Okay, so, okay.
The discovery of the site north of town already on Monday, July 7th.
So Ballard, or Glenn Dennis, I should say, from the Ballard funeral home, he talks to Nurse Hatton, right?
Well, there is some debate, and we have some reservation as to whether Glenn is repeating what he may have heard,
right,
or he is actually recounting a personal observation. We have had additional corroboration from witnesses that, yes, the phone calls did come from the base hospital inquiring as to the availability of child-sized caskets.
Right.
Okay. As many as 4.
Right.
4 we even spoke to the son of the driver contracted by Ballard who made the long drive up to Amarillo, Texas, where they would have picked up additional caskets. And according to the son, that ride, that pickup did take place. The question is whether Glenn Dennis actually had this meeting, this discussion with the nurse as to what she witnessed at the base hospital, as to an attempt at a preliminary autopsy.
So what? When Glenn Dennis arrives, I've got 60 seconds, Don. When Glenn Dennis arrives at the hospital, what did he report? What he witnessed? What was going on?
What he reported, and again, it's open to debate. What he reported was that he saw wreckage in the back of one of the ambulance trucks behind the loading dock area of the hospital. And then he would claim that he went inside and he was immediately, as far as rushed to by this nurse friend who told him that he better leave immediately, that it wasn't safe for him to be there. And then Glenn would claim that he was accosted by this red-haired captain and a black sergeant who threatened him that they'd be picking his bones out of the sand if he didn't leave right there and then.
Let's take our break right here. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Don Schmitt is with us. It is the 75th anniversary of Roswell this year. Tonight, it's Roswell Revisited. When we come back, we will announce the fine line of hair care products that Don Schmitt and I are releasing to the world. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We'll be right back.
Hi, everybody. This is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Your 1 million gigawatt paranormal powerhouse, KUNX-DB, the X.
Are you ready to read about true paranormal events? UNX Media publishes non-fiction books about UFOs, ghosts and haunted places, time anomalies, cryptid creatures, and more. Just like KUNX-DB Radio, it's all about unexplained phenomena. Visit www.unxmedia.com to see our list of great book titles by Debbie Ziegelmeyer, Gene Walker, Devin Listrom, Wayne Lawrence, Bill Spicer, and yours truly, Margie Kay. That's unxmedia.com.
Why is it we're not very good with our health regimen until it's too late? We don't put oil in the car until the engine blows up. When the body's out of balance, your health is not so good. Give your body some love. Log on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. Try our Life Change Tea, which cleanses you from harmful intruders. A clean colon is one of the ways to bring the body in balance. We also carry organic supplements to help you get where you need to go. So do your body a favor. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. You can even visit our sales page to save some dough. Does anybody call money dough anymore? Anyway, if you're looking for short, helpful health tips, go to YouTube and punch in Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. So, log on to getthetea.com, shop, get balanced, then learn some cool tips at Health Matters Now. You'll be glad you did. That's getthetea.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I only drink Fade to Black blend coffee from Rivermoon. Just click on the Rivermoon Coffee banner at jimmychurchradio.com. Promo code F2B Blend.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact.
When you're in the house for longer periods of time, you can see them flying or running across the floor. Ooh, yuck. They're unhealthy, gross, and disgusting. Bugs. I loathe bugs. We keep a clean home, but occasionally bugs show up. Well, I found something that is tougher than bugs. Orange Guard. On contact, it kills hidden bugs, including ants, roaches, and fleas. Plus, Orange Guard is a residual repellent. All of the ingredients of Orange Guard are on the FDA generally recognized as safe list. Orange Guard may be used around food, humans, and pets. It comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Orange Guard. Available at orangeguard.com, Whole Foods, and Ace Hardware.
Gold loves chaos, uncertainty, and disarray. History shows us what gold does when people aren't sure about the government, the stock market, their jobs, or their retirement savings. Our national debt is skyrocketing. Gold and other precious metals are a defense measure against inflation and a stock market that might take years to recover. So what can you do right now to protect yourself? Call United Gold Group. We offer gold and other precious metals delivered securely within 72 hours. Are you worried about the stock market? We can also help you set up a real gold or silver IRA or a 401k. Safe and secure. United Gold Group makes gold ownership affordable. Call now and get up to $2,500 in free gold or silver with a qualified IRA. Call 800-753-8534. That's 800-753-8534 or visit unitedgoldgroup.com.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why fade to black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network.
I gotta say, this is Fade to Black. I'm your Jimmy Church. I was over in the chat room during the break, and so Don, somebody over there, I don't know the full story. I don't know the full extent of it, but I guess somebody over there is saying that I gave them a ride in my car, and he had a bird with him many years ago. I'm like, what? I haven't given a stranger a ride in my car ever.
I'd be surprised if you had.
Yeah, ever. We're going to get back to this, but let me tell you. Do you remember Carlos Castaneda?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm sure you read all of his books because you were into that thing back then. But anyway, so in one of Carlos Castaneda's first book or a second book, he and I just pounded his books, man. They were just so great. So anyway, he says in this book, he says, never pick up a hitchhiker because you're picking up death.
Yes.
Right. So he, and he tells a story in the book about how he picks up somebody and drops him off, and then he's driving down the road. It's like a half hour later, and there's the dude again, and he passes him up, and he keeps driving, and then this, it's whatever, half hour, 100 miles later, there's the dude again, hitchhiking, and there's this ominous thing: never pick up a hitchhiker. Well, you know what? I listened to Carlos Castaneda.
Yes.
I never put a stranger in my car.
No, I'll vouch for you because even that classic Rod Serling Twilight Zone episode, where I think as young boys, that scared all of us off of ever picking up a stranger.
Ever.
Yes.
Ever.
Yes.
Never. I've never had a stranger in my car. I can say with 100% certainty that has never happened. Okay, so anyway, back to the event, because all of this is going on. The bodies are at the hospital, and we've got a survivor. What happened to the survivor?
From all accounts, the bodies as well as the wreckage and the survivor all were destined for Wright Field in Dayton, Ohio. Now, before anybody jumps the boat and thinks, well, what about Area 51? There was no Area 51.
That didn't happen until 1955.
55, that's correct. 8 years later.
Now, there are also, you got to love mythology, right? And urban myth around the Roswell case. There were accounts that EBE-1, right, the survivor, went to Los Alamos. Did not? You're saying that everything went to Wright Field?
Initially.
Yes.
Keeping in mind that the government/military doesn't manufacture anything. So everything would have been assimilated into the private sector for testing and analysis at a certain point.
Sure.
It's one of the reasons that we've had first-hand witnesses at Boeing, at Lockheed, at Los Alamos, at Hughes, at Rand, at Battelle, at Bureau, all talking about testing the wreckage. Bodies and a survivor are something else. And the one specific witness would be Lieutenant Colonel Marion Magruder. He was a triple ace from World War II. He was part of the War College class of 47-48. We have the documents that demonstrate that he was on a special assignment at then Wright-Patterson. This would have been the April of 48, just after that January when they switched over and they split off, and there were two separate fields. You had Wright Field and Patterson Field, two adjoining airfields. They became one Air Force, Wright-Patterson, and in April of 48, Magruder, with the class, the War College class, they were shown wreckage from Roswell as well as the survivor. He confessed as far as a deathbed confession in 1995, before he passed away, to his sons, that they were shown the survivor. And beyond that is all rumor. In fact, even Magruder would say, when asked what became of the survivor, he said it was his information that it died shortly thereafter.
After he saw the survivor.
After they were shown in April of 48. Correct.
Was there ever, to the best of your knowledge, was there ever any communication established between the survivor and us?
Well, even at the impact site, Dan Dwyer, the crew chief of the Roswell Fire Department, said that he was getting mental impressions from the survivor and didn't know what to make of it. And then we've had people who described that there were linguists who talked about an attempt to communicate with the survivor shortly, after it was brought to Wright Field, in an attempt to obviously, learn as much as possible, because if it can verbally, if it can audibly communicate, then how can you, potentially, actually derive information from, one of the greatest discovery in the millennium. And so I'm sure there were all types of efforts, but wouldn't we love to see, records and files regarding those attempts?
Now, with everything that happened, we're talking about tremendous logistics, lots of witnesses, lots of military personnel that were active duty at the time that were assigned to this. You have air flights, you have trucks, you have a hospital involved, you have bodies, you have a survivor. All of this is going on over a period of 3 to 4 days, and everything arrives at Wright Field. During this time, an about face happened, which is the Army then and the Pentagon then do a press release saying that, nothing to see here. It was a weather balloon. Now, here's the point that I brought up earlier and the point that I'm bringing up now. Every reporter in the country is now going to Roswell for the biggest story in the history of planet Earth. They all have to turn their cars around. They all have to cancel their flights because now it's been announced it was a weather balloon. It wasn't a flying saucer. And the cover-up started. And there after that press release, the second one, Don, the story literally disappears.
Correct.
I'm going to be in Roswell. I'm going to be speaking about Roswell in July 1st through the 3rd. And one of the points that I'm going to bring up then is probably the most important, in that before Art Bell, there was Long John Nebel.
Right.
And Long John Nebel's radio show, which was without question one of the biggest radio shows in the history of broadcasting, huge, out of WOR in New York, where he would have 10, 20, 30 million people listening to that broadcast 6 nights a week. And he covered all of this. And Kenneth Arnold was on his show many times. And Donald Kehoe on the show. I mean, just repeat guest over and over again. Shavers, and he had Arthur C. Clarke on the show. And the show was called The Party Line. And this is the point that I want to bring up. They covered Nazi flying saucers. They covered Kenneth Arnold. They covered every famous UFO case, every encounter, every abduction case, every contact case, the desert, everything that you can think about was covered on that show for decades. The one thing that they never covered on Long John Nebel's show, night after night after night, was Roswell.
Precisely.
Kenneth Arnold never brought up Roswell. Donald Kehoe on the show talking about the big cover-up. Never mentions Roswell.
Correct.
That is a history note of record for me that this cover-up was completely successful.
Exactly. So efficient, so ingenious by the very wording of the press release. And within a half hour after the press release went out, the phone calls were not only coming in at Roswell, they were also coming in, going up the chain of command to General Ramey at Fort Worth. And by all the press accounts, the timeline, the bulletins that were going out, General Ramey, within a half hour of the acknowledgement that they had captured the real thing, he was already telling the press. He had it in his office. It was under heavy guard. and it looks like a weather balloon with a radar reflector kite. The evolution from the flying saucer, even the Christian Monitor newsletter, the Associated Press did the bulletins minute by minute. And within that 5-hour time period, you see from the flying saucer and then the evolution into the weather balloon with the radar reflector kite. This all happened not within a matter of days. This was all within 5 hours. And in that press conference in General Ramey's office, not in Roswell, where this all went down, it shifted all attention away from Roswell. Base commander at Roswell, Colonel William Blanchard, he announces he's going on leave, so he's not available. Major Marcel, the only one mentioned in the press release, he's conveniently missing. He's gone. He's in Fort Worth. And Mac Brazel, the ranch foreman, he's been abducted by the military. They have him for the next 5 days, hiding him out at the guest house at the base. So no one is available in Roswell. All attention over the Fort Worth. General Ramey, it's nothing more than a weather balloon. They take the pictures. Marcel is ordered not to say another word to the press. He's kept overnight. He's not even allowed to fly back to Roswell till the next evening, until this is, again, quieted down. And Ramey announces that the resumption of the flight has been canceled. No need to have this weather balloon tested and analyzed. I've just identified it. End of story. And yet the FBI telex, the FBI Bureau Office in Dallas, at 6:17 that same evening, put out a press release where they refuted the balloon explanation. They said not only is it not a balloon based on their phone conversations with Wright Field, but the actual wreckage is still going on to Wright Field for testing and analysis. In fact, the Pentagon even repeated that same final destination. They also said that the wreckage was still going on the Wright Field for testing and analysis. So this is all happening within that time frame. And yet already high-ranking officials are refuting and are disagreeing with the balloon explanation. But the press latched on to the balloon, they accepted it, and the story stuck for the next 30 years.
Now, I want to jump 30 years later, and we're going to do that right now. But it also, going back to this time period, Mac Brazel shows up in town with a shiny new pickup truck.
Right, correct. At the time, there had been 3 separate awards being offered, 1,000 each by 2 newspapers and 1,000 more by a private individual. Anyone providing physical proof of the flying disc, of the flying saucers. And the fact that they kept Brazel for 5 full days, they deprived him of water, of food, of sleep. They asked him the same questions over and over again. They did not afford him due process to call his boss that he wasn't at the ranch, even to call his own wife to let her know he was safe, that he was someplace. So, and if you can imagine, Jimmy, that he talked about the indignity that he was subjected to a full Army physical, including a full body cavity search.
Yeah, for a weather balloon.
Do you think they were looking for a weather balloon?
Yeah. And now, to the point, Mac Brazel didn't own the ranch.
He was a foreman. Correct.
He was a cowboy.
Right. He was a supervisor.
Right. And where does he come up with the money to suddenly show up in town with a brand new pickup truck, which was a big deal for anybody?
It was a year's income back then.
It's a year's income now.
Yeah, in many respects, yes. But he also had enough money that he bought a meat locker up in Denver, Colorado, and he purchased some land.
That's right, he purchased some land.
I mean, all of a sudden he shows up, and we had his neighbors say that he barely had 2 nickels to rub together in his blue jeans. And yet this all comes together immediately thereafter. And one of the things that we always kept coming back to with the Brazel family What would it have taken to break him?
Was it just that? Did they buy his silence?
Well, what he finally confided, there was a feed and grain operator in Roswell by the last name of Patterson. And we tracked down the family, and the son knew Mac Brazel. And the one thing that Brazel finally said, now we have to go back to the zeitgeist of the time. What were people the most fearful of back at that time? And what Brazel said, when they finally told him that they would put him in an asylum and he would never see his family a day after. Back then, the asylums were lobotomies, electric shock. They feared an asylum more than they feared prison back at that time.
Sure.
And that's what broke him. The thought that, oh my God, they're going to, erase this from my mind. They're going to make me into a vegetable. And that's when he finally, okay, whatever you want me to say, I will say. And that's when they escorted him through town. At the same time that the balloon explanation is going out, Brazel is being escorted by the military to the newspapers, to the radio stations, where he's also retracting. He's also saying, it was nothing more than a weather balloon. I never meant it to get out of hand and get everybody excited, but that's all it was.
And, I brought up Long John Nebel earlier, and there's something else, and I will say this to the audience. If you can bring me evidence, I would love to look at it. But not only was it erased from popular culture and with somebody as significant as Long John Nebel, and all of the researchers that he paraded on his show each night to discuss UFOs and ET contact and crashes and everything, sightings and everything that they discussed. But it also wasn't mentioned in any books. Kehoe didn't put it in any of his books. Roswell wasn't out there at all. And if there's a mention of Roswell out there, please, I want to see it, but I haven't.
It was, Jimmy, mentioned in 2-3 books that I'm aware of. One was Frank Edwards' book, Flying Saucers Here and Now.
But it was brief,
It was brief. It was just a couple sentences. Harold T. Wilkins, in his book, Flying Saucers on the Attack, also, a couple sentences.
Couple of sentences. That's it. There isn't, you would have thought, and my point that I'm trying to drive home is that Roswell should have been the subject of many shows for Long John Nebel. It should be chapters in books by Donald Kehoe, but it wasn't.
No, you're absolutely correct. And it wasn't until then Lieutenant Colonel Jesse Marcel Sr. was diagnosed with terminal emphysema. And after he had been told for years, just be a good soldier, it's all going to come out, you're going to be vindicated, you'll be a hero, it's all going to come out. Well, he waits 5 years, 10, 15, 20. It's 30 years later, and he realizes, well, they're not coming out. Well, he comes out.
Now, when he went public. Now let's talk about that moment before we go to the break. And by the way, you're doing overtime with us, so just get ready. There's still one more segment left. And we're not anywhere near to the end of this story. But I want to go to the fictionalized version of this, and that is the movie.
Yes.
And so in the movie, the bomb group, they get together.
A reunion.
A reunion, and that's where Jesse Marcel has his Sunday go-to-meeting thing with himself, and all of this comes out. Was that Hollywood, or was that pretty close to reality?
We had heard from a number of military from reunions that they would bring this up. There would be discussion about Roswell and who was finally going to break the story. And so it became more of a composite situation in that we wanted to draw in all the other characters. And that's where we felt that a reunion would have served the purpose. it still was a case of Marcel deciding whether to break his oath. He's dying at the time, and whether it was worth the wait, and whether, as much as he was told, it won't matter, Jess, the people still won't believe you after all this time. And then with the Martin Sheen character, the Deep Throat, the Fed from Washington, telling him this was all true. It's all real. But then when Marcel asks, well, what did I see back in that field back in 1947? And he reels him right back. And why, Jesse, that was just a weather balloon. No, it wasn't. I held it in my hands. And it's like that classic moment within the vampire and the reporter who's been, trying to prove he exists. And the vampire finally says, go ahead, tell the world you have no proof. No one will believe you. And so Marcel has that exact same moment. You have no proof. And what's the final scene in the movie? They're back out at the debris field. He and his son, they're still looking. Did it really happen? Was I really here back in 47?
What did we've got 2 minutes before the break. How did Jesse recount this to you?
Well, I never had the experience of talking to Jesse Sr. He had died about 3 years before we started our own independent investigation.
Okay, gotcha.
So we could rely only on all the video recordings, some of the audio tracks, and the actual people who had conducted the interviews.
Okay, if we back up to 1980, Charles Berlitz, right?
Yeah, the book, right.
Right. How was it recounted there?
One of the problems in the Moore Berlitz book is that they have a picture of Marcel, claiming that it's the actual wreckage in the book. And it's a crop picture of one of the weather balloon pictures. And so they did not do Jesse justice in suggesting that he was photographed with the genuine article, for example. Now, the quotes from numerous interviews were accurate, but as even Bill Moore, the co-author of the book, described it, as a disgraceful hodgepodge of fact and fiction.
Right.
But it did open the doors. It did start as far as, and to the point that I never purchased a copy of the book until we started, 9 years later, because I was that much a skeptic. Could not accept that the government could keep something of that magnitude a secret for all that time.
How did, 30 seconds, how did Charles Berlitz and Bill Moore stumble onto the Roswell case?
Well, they had also done the book, Berlitz had done the book on the Bermuda Triangle.
That's right.
And then they also did the book, they did the book together on the Philadelphia experiment.
That's right.
And because Stan Friedman had already talked to Marcel. And what's interesting is that Stan was the principal investigator for the book.
That's
and
right.
He's only acknowledged, but he's the main reason that there was that book. And they needed a heavyweight writer, and that being Charles Berlitz, the linguist. And so that's how, I think it was Harper and Collins, the publisher, that brought them together.
So that was the timeline then. Stanton spoke to Marcel.
Correct, 78.
In 78, and then he turns around and reaches out to Charles Berlitz and William Moore. And the book was published, I think.
It was mainly Moore, and then I think it was the publisher, Harper and Collins, that then put the two of them together.
Put them together, and that book was published in 1980?
That's correct, 1980.
Man, see, I still have I think in my case, the opposite of yours, first the body, then the mind. Our guest tonight, the one and only Don Schmitt. We will continue 75th anniversary of Roswell Revisited right after this short break. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer and UNX Networks. Ray Hobbs, I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the X.
Hey, what up, y'all? It's your girl Vivica Fox here, and you are listening to my boy, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
This is Jimmy Church. Jason Martell's book, Knowledge Apocalypse 10-Year Anniversary Edition, is now available. Most ancient cultures speak of a time when their gods visited them. They never say their gods came from across the ocean or from the mountains. They always came down from the skies. Was ancient man visited by gods or extraterrestrials? We have not been told the full truth about our human past. There was a time when all the ancient cultures lived amongst beings they considered their gods. The search for truth leads us down the path of learning where the ETs might come from and why they are here. To understand some of these advanced topics and learn the truth about human origins, buy the new book from Jason Martell, Knowledge Apocalypse, now in its 10-year anniversary edition, available on Amazon.com by clicking on the banners over on our site, or simply visit JasonMartell.com. That's JasonMartell.com. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I take Life Change Tea supplements every single day. It's what I do. Click on their banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Are you ready to read about true paranormal events? UNX Media publishes nonfiction books about UFOs, ghosts and haunted places, time anomalies, cryptid creatures, and more. Just like KUNXDB Radio, it's all about unexplained phenomena. Visit www.unxmedia.com to see our list of great book titles by Debbie Ziegelmeyer, Gene Walker, Devin Listrom, Wayne Lawrence, Bill Spicer, and yours truly, Margie Kay. That's unxmedia.com.
When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today.
This is Billy Carson with ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Forbidden Knowledge TV has just reached its 1-year anniversary. That's right, 1 year. And as a show of appreciation, we are giving all new subscribers a free 30-day trial of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. That's 30 days to binge watch thousands of movies, documentaries, conferences, workshops, lectures, yoga classes, meditation courses, and so much more. So log on to ForbiddenKnowledge.tv from your computer or mobile device, or get the Forbidden Knowledge TV app on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon, iTunes, or Google Play today, and use coupon code 30daysfree. That's coupon code 30 days free on ForbiddenKnowledge.tv today.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
This is Kristen, Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. Heading into overtime tonight, Don Schmitt. It is the 75th anniversary this year of the crash in Roswell, New Mexico, north of Roswell. And Don's new book, Witness to Roswell, the 75th anniversary edition, is now available. The links for that are up not only on our website, but throughout social media. And I have a copy of the book. I don't have the 75th anniversary hardcover edition, though. But I'm going to get mine in Roswell in July, in a couple of months. Now, this is where the story attempt, I'm talking about, let's go to 1997. We're going to jump forward in the timeline here, 96, 97, where there is another attempt at closure with this. And we have a couple of things that happen. We have elected officials in the state of New Mexico that want to get into this and get an inquiry going. We have the General Accounting Office, the GAO, which scares the crap out of me, by the way. They get involved. Right. And I remember, Don, look, I'm not the most educated person when it comes to Roswell or any UFO. There's just too much information out there. But I'm a student of this. And I know what I have read over the years, all of your books and Stanton's and Crash at Corona, right? I've read them all. And I have a pretty firm grasp of timelines of things. And that includes Mogul and other things, because I'm studying the UFO phenomenon, right? And especially by the time the 90s roll around, I've got a pretty firm grip, right? Okay. When the press releases came out about Roswell, case closed, right? And we had a couple of events that happened in the mid to late 90s dealing with this. Here's the thing. When I had read, I was in my car, and I had read this, and I rush home, I pull open the internet, and I'm like, no, they're talking about 1954 here. Mm-hmm. They're talking about 1952 here. Even I know that this is BS.
Right.
And so I went back and did my own, just to clear my head as to what was now being pushed on the citizens of the United States, a false story. But I wanted to make sure that I had my facts right, and I did.
Yes.
Now, take me back to 1997 when you started to read the GAO's report. Also, one other thing in the GAO report was that, and I was shocked, that all the records for Roswell are gone. Mm-hmm. Right? Every transmission, every receipt, that's the General Accounting Office, right? They want, it's like Judge Judy, right? People's Court. Do you have a receipt? Right. And if you don't have a receipt, you don't have a case.
You don't have a case, right.
Right. And suddenly there's nothing anywhere for Roswell. What went through your mind as you started to read this stuff?
At the first atomic bomb base in the world, there is no record for them in the summer of 1947 when this all happened. How convenient. You'd see that in the movie, you'd walk out because you'd say, this is too predictable. They're insulting our intelligence. And even dating back in the first years of our investigation, remember we talked about Captain Sheridan Cabot?
Yes.
Retired lieutenant colonel. He was head of counterintelligence at the base. And what was so striking was after Kevin Randall and I had spent a full afternoon on a Sunday with him at their their winter home in Sierra Vista, Arizona. And after he spent the better part of the afternoon denying that he was even there, that he was involved in any aspect of the case. And he walked us out to the car, and we were saying our goodbyes, and then he said to us, boys, I just have to know one thing. Should you find anything that should threaten national security, You will keep it to yourselves, won't you? And we looked at one another and we nodded, yes, Colonel, yes, of course. Well, we got in the car, we drove off, we looked at one another and went, he knows everything.
Right.
And so it became a harbinger of then what it became, not only with the race with the Undertaker, with the witnesses, but the fact that we realized that we were fighting City Hall. That from being total skeptics, that we had to start treating this as though it was the real thing, that we were getting ready to get on the field with the majors as far as this was going to be a hardball game. And so we immediately approached the late Senator Barry Goldwater of Arizona. And we have a personal letter from him as far as that he himself tried to get answers about Roswell and that he knew Colonel Blanchard personally. You want to talk about somebody who made such a blunder as far as the base commander at Roswell, who went on to become a 4-star general by the age of 50. So he was their favorite son, and that he was in no way reprimanded, just as Marcel was not reprimanded, just as Walter Hott, the public information officer, was not rebuked or reprimanded in any way. They were doing as they were ordered. They put out the press release, and then they had to live with it, even in the face of the fact that the evidence certainly, spoke volumes otherwise. So we were working with Senator Goldwater, and then we shortly thereafter we worked with the late Congressman Stephen Schiff, representing his own constituents in New Mexico. Well, he is stonewalled left and right, the White House, the Pentagon, branches of the military. He sends 3 separate letters to then Secretary of Defense Les Aspin, where he also has the door slammed in his face. And that's when he went to Congress's own investigative body, that being the GAO, General Accounting Office. And their, as far as purview, was to find receipts, as you described, Jimmy. In other words, let's demonstrate that something had happened. Well, surprise, surprise, they found nothing. There wasn't a single branch of the military that could provide anything because everything had mysteriously been destroyed. That everything from the first atomic bomb base in the world for the summer of 1947 was mysteriously destroyed. Well, anybody who believes that, also believe the other nonsense.
Yeah, the General Accounting Office went on to say, and I'm going to paraphrase here, but this is my memory, saying that all records of phone calls were destroyed. Any recordings that were done were destroyed. Any general accounting of any personnel that were there was destroyed. That there was nothing at all available about Roswell.
And what's interesting is that Kevin Randall had actually he had interviewed the base accountant, the one that managed the purse, all the expenses, all the receipts at the base at that time. And he made the comment to Kevin that for the recovery of something as mundane as a weather balloon, we sure spent a hell of a lot of money at that particular week. In other words, something big had happened, and there's no accounting for it, and there's no record of it now, except all the eyewitness accounts. But the point being, it still coincided with the fact that a lot of money was allocated for something. And the onus is presently on the government, because whether they want to claim it was a weather balloon or Project Mogul or even crash dummies, you're not talking about any expense. You're not talking about anything more than just picking it up and tossing it in the back of a truck, and that's the end of it. There was a tremendous amount of money spent for the recovery operation of something.
Who was the governor that got involved back then? Was it Bill Richardson?
No, back at that time, yes. Bill Richardson and Governor Richardson even wrote the foreword to one of our books.
Right.
And I've met with him since, and he is 100% convinced that there's a major cover-up and that they stonewalled him as well, and that the government still has not come clean regarding what actually crashed outside of Roswell in July of 1947.
Now, so back to 1997, I think I've got the year correct. Was that
that's the fourth explanation?
The fourth explanation was that
crash dummies.
It was crash dummies. It was Project Mogul, And that's what everybody had confused with alien bodies, that these were crash dummies that were thrown out of airplanes with parachutes. And that's actually what happened. Now, what was Project Mogul? And again, I think the year is 1954. Do I have that correct?
Well, Project Mogul did actually exist back in 1947. And the Air Force explanation, which they came out as even Newsweek magazine very aptly called a preemptive strike on the part of the Air Force, because the Air Force had promised Congressman Schiff that if they found anything that they could attribute to the 1947 crash, he would be the first one they would present it to.
Right.
Well, they didn't. They had a press conference, Colonel Richard Weaver, in September of 1994, and Colonel Weaver, admitted that they had lied about the original balloon explanation, and he presented a new theory, and he called it a new theory, and that being this Russian spy balloon. The notion, the idea that should the Soviets detonate their own first atomic bomb back at that time, we would pick up the shock wave. And so it's the same type of a balloon, a cluster balloon with radar reflector, kites, and then in this case, a sonobuoy, an acoustic listening device that would pick up that shock wave. Well, the project failed miserably because the Soviets detonated their first bomb in August of 49. Mogul did not detect it. We picked it up as far as higher radiation in Eastern Europe. That's how we made that determination. But the point being, their press conference attributed flight number 4 as responsible for the debris field on the Brazil Ranch in July of 1947. Flight number 4, based on the very log, the diary, the documents recording those launches, it was scrubbed. There was a heavy overcast. It states it right in the logbook. There was a heavy overcast. They jettisoned the balloons, which already had been filled with helium, and the arrays were not part of that.
So they were never launched.
Never launched. So you can't put a balloon responsible for anything if it's never left the ground.
Well, and the other point, and I want to get to the crash test dummies, but with the most intelligent people on the planet, all stationed at Roswell Army Airfield. I'm not talking about the scientists and the physicists that were also throughout the state of New Mexico, but the personnel at Roswell Army Airfield clearly knew the difference between a weather balloon and anything else.
And they clearly knew those particular balloons because even in the Roswell base yearbook from 1947, there's a picture of those balloons hanging from rafters in one of the hangars because they would assemble them there. And they would launch these these radar reflector kites in conjunction with the bomb drop exercises that they were conducting outside of the city limits. So they would send up these high altitude balloons and they'd get the wind readings and direction and that type of thing. And they could adjust as far as their navigation for dropping sand barrels, the equivalent of the bombs at that time. That's what they were using. But nonetheless, nobody was more familiar with those balloons than the personnel at Roswell. And so therein is the double insult to all this.
Yes.
No one knew them better than the personnel at Roswell.
Now, the crash dummy testing program, I mistakenly said that was Project Mogul. But
Project Excelsior and High Dive. Those were
High Dive. So that testing program with the crash test dummies didn't start until 1954?
52.
52.
And then it continued through 54. And because they were testing specifically, it was Dr./Colonel Randy Lovelace, that they were testing high altitude breathing equipment. And Lovelace himself personally made the first jump, the first test. His glove came off and he suffered severe frostbite.
Right.
So they thought from there on, we're not going to risk any people. And they created these 6 foot tall, plastic, wooden, hinged. So they totally resembled as far as the human anatomy, as far as the joints of the human body. They were dropping these test dummies. And the point being also, Jimmy, is that they were wearing full jumpsuits and harnesses and parachutes. And even the very designer, the person who manufactured these dummies, he laughed. He said it was ridiculous because each and every time they struck the ground, the limbs were flying in all directions. They broke up into a dozen pieces. I can assure you we have no accounts describing any as far as limbs or decapitations or anything regarding the bodies. And the fact that this is 5 years after Roswell, sorry, you can't cross the 2 years and say that the witnesses at Roswell 47 were mistakenly, describing something that happened 5 years later.
Yeah, and why do you think? I just want your theory on this. Why do you think the Air Force can screw up a lie that badly? Right? If you're going to put it out there, at least have your dates correct.
Yes.
Because this was a national story. This was a big deal press release. Roswell case closed. Right?
And it was the best they could come up with, because even after Mogul, the growing number of body witnesses that we were presenting, in fact, even the New York Times offered us a challenge. If we could come up with a single first-hand witness to non-human bodies, they not only would retract the Mogul story, but also the original balloon story from 1947. Well, we didn't give them one witness. We gave them 8. We provided them with 8 first-hand witnesses, and they headed for the tall grass all over again. So they saw, and the fact that Congressman Schiff was also not backing down. In fact, right after that very afternoon that the Pentagon had the press conference, I called him right up at his office in Washington, thinking he'd be saying goodbye. Well, Don, we're going to have to accept what the Air Force says. End of story. And I'll never forget the way he came to the phone and he went, Don, they're a bunch of goddamn liars. And that we're going to hit them again after I get reelected. And well, we know what happened with Schiff, with the skin cancer and 51. He's dying within the next 6 months after he got reelected. But nonetheless, the stories of the bodies needed to be accounted for, and that was the best they could come up with. And then they came up with a new medical malady of time compression, that the older you get, you not only start to confuse the years, but also the decades. Doesn't exist. You aren't going to find it in any medical book or journal anywhere. But again, it's the Pentagon. It's the government. I always joke that, husbands, try that with your wives. You come home too late. You got 4 different explanations, but we let the government get away with it. I won't. No. And we thank you for that.
Do you think that we are finally at a point here, Don, 2022, but we have the Senate Intelligence Committee, we have the Gillibrand Amendment, we have everything that is moving forward right now. Do you see a day where we do get to honestly revisit Roswell and we will see everything in an official capacity? Will we revisit and reveal what actually happened at Roswell?
We've had the discussion before, and it's my position that unless we have congressional hearings, unless they provide immunity for whistleblowers to come forward, including Roswell. Now, granted, they're all gone. Our first 10 witnesses, we've lost that race with the Undertaker, so to speak.
Sure.
But we have their affidavits, we have their depositions, we have their deathbed testimonies that their families would happily provide. And there would still be all the documentation, all the photographs. That they recorded every second, every aspect of that recovery operation, every analysis, every test, every autopsy. It's all still there. And the point being that I've already been told that we should have our attorneys ready, that when this breaks in Washington and they finally do have hearings, that one of the things they will want to look into is Roswell, the granddaddy of them all. Because it isn't that we want to see the documents. It's going to be a case of, I want to hold that memory material right in my hand.
Sure. And with the overlap between the Army and the Air Force that happened in 1947 and moving forward, certainly in 1948, where do you think all of these records reside? Are they still with the Army? Were they transferred over to the Air Force? Who is in possession of this now?
Excellent question. And then let's also remind the audience that at the very time of the Pentagon press conference with Colonel Richard Weaver, and then the Secretary of the Air Force, Sheila Windhall, put out a statement that they were absolving all Air Force personnel of their security oaths regarding Roswell. Well, and as you've just pointed out again, Jimmy, there was no Air Force in July of 1947.
Right.
This was an Army incident. So I think she gave away the red herring. I think she gave away the fact that maybe they don't even know where the records are, because it was right in between the split. So did they stay with the Army, or were they transferred over to the Air Force? Or did they all somehow, because we also know the theory that the Navy, for even having a greater coverage on a global level of UFO cases, that it's the Navy that's actually been in charge of the investigation all these decades. So, granted, we've knocked on doors, and Congressman Schiff and the Freedom of Information Act request, we've gone to both the Army and the Navy and the Air Force. And Kevin Rando and I, we went to the Pentagon on one occasion, and we met with Colonel Richard Weaver, who was in charge of Army intelligence at the Pentagon. And the fact that they were telling us, well, it's with the Air Force. Well, the Air Force was telling us, no, it was still with. So that's the shell game. And as long as they feel that they control the game, they're going to control, obviously, the outcome. But that's where Congress now has to step in and say, you have been deceiving us, you've been deceiving the public for 75 years. And Roswell's at the pinnacle. Roswell's at the top of that. And it could explain all of this in one afternoon's hearings.
Now, in the 45 seconds we have left, one of the things that I find really interesting, a development that happened over the last month, the UAP task force and that being dissolved, the creation of a new task force,
right,
and the renaming of the Foreign Technology Division at Wright Pat.
Yes.
And that this new UFO investigative group is based out of Wright Pat.
Is based out of Wright Pat.
Isn't
that again, so convenient? And the thing is, even the three previous official investigations, Project Sign, Project Grudge, and Project Blue Book, were all headquartered at Wright Pat. All roads lead back to Wright Pat. They don't lead the Area 51.
No, they
don't. They
don't
lead the Roswell. They all, since Roswell. And then when you consider all the underground levels, all the underground vaults, all the rumors, I'm talking to another retired officer from Wright Pat, and I'm hoping to get information from him about things. And keeping in mind, one of our key witnesses at Roswell was the late General Arthur Exon, who was a former commanding officer at Wright Pat in 1964. And he told us, Jimmy, that there were entire areas of Wright Pat that were off limits to him. And he was the base commander.
Don, I'll see you in a couple of months, my man. And
look forward to it. This will be great.
We'll once again break bread and share hair products. Don Schmitt, thank you so much, Don. Again, from everybody in our community, we extend our thanks to you for all of your hard work for 3-4 decades now. It's absolutely crazy. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in a couple of months in Roswell.
That means a lot, and I appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. We'll see you in a few months. Be safe, stay well, and Godspeed.
You're the best. Don Schmitt. The links for the new book are right there on social media and over at jimmychurchradio.com. With that, I'm going to get out of here before the network cuts me off. This is Fade to Black. I want to thank Don Schmitt. Great show tonight. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Kevin. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vitoa, Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and this broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2022 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Everybody be safe. I'll see you tomorrow night. It's time to Fade to Black.